I am Councillor Damien Doran-Timson, Chair of this Governance and Risk Committee. Welcome to today's committee. The meeting is being broadcast live over the internet and on the Council's YouTube channel, and a recording of the meeting will be available through the Council's website afterwards. There is more information about meeting arrangements on the Council's website, including a privacy statement. Today, I'm being assisted by officers from Committee and IT Services, along with the Governance Manager, Leslie Montague. Attendees may be joining the meeting from somewhere else, and members are reminded to be polite, respectful and patient, and that everything said while microphones are live will be broadcast and recorded. So we move straight to business and item 1, which is apologies for absence. Anastasia.
Thank you, Chair. We have not received any apologies today.
Thank you very much. Do we have any declarations of interest? And Anne Pike, I see your light on there, please, Anne.
Yeah, there are some parts of the paper where I would like to declare an interest in relation to my role on the IJB and also my role on COSLA representing unpaid carers.
And thank you very much. I certainly identify that as a connection, unless you think otherwise, so you'll be staying throughout the meeting, I presume. Thank you, Anne. Are there any other declarations of interest? Any order of business? A slight change of order of business in that item 7 will come after item 4, the draft minutes of the meeting. This will to allow a better flow of the meeting. We then move to item 4, which are the minutes of the meeting held on the 3rd of March 2025. And do committee members have anything on to item 7, which is the Internal Audit Annual Report? And I will look to Stuart Saunders to deliver that, Stuart.
Thank you, Chair. The annual report sets out the internal audit work carried out during 24-25 and provides summary details of the risk-based audits, their audit conclusions, and details of the internal audit team's performance. In 24-25, internal audit work in the UK public sector was regulated by the Public Sector Internal Audit Standards. As noted in the report, going forward, these standards have been replaced by Global Internal Audit Standards and took effect from the 1st of April. The audit standards require me to be independent and objective, and section 3 of the annual report includes details of auditors' independence and a formal confirmation of the organisational independence of the internal audit function. Audit standards also require that I deliver an annual internal audit opinion, and that can be used by the organisation to inform its annual governance statement. This is provided in section 6 of the annual report, and I am of the opinion that the Council has a sound framework of governance, risk management and control. My conclusion is based on the internal audits undertaken as part of the agreed 24-25 internal audit plan, the significant pieces of follow-up work undertaken, and the work of the Council's Corporate Governance Board. Summary details of all the audits and the conclusions are provided in Appendix C. The committee will note that my report will also be submitted to the Audit Committee on the 27th of June, as that committee has responsibility for reviewing the Council's control environment and for monitoring the performance of the internal audit service. Here, the committee is invited to note the internal audit annual report for 24-25, and I'd be happy to take any questions.
Stuart, thank you very much. I open up to committee for any questions.
Thanks, Chair. Just got a couple of questions on Appendix C, where everything's summarised. Third one down, building services, plant hand and tools. That was mentioned in the context of the paper as being unsound. Report to Audit Committee to be confirmed. Can you just give us a wee bit more information on why that has been determined to be unsound and what potential action points are being taken to resolve that, please?
Thank you. I'll pass this to Stuart. This may also come up at our presentation later on as well. But Stuart, if you want to take this first, and then certainly if David Moore would like to come in as well, please do.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, so the scope of that internal audit was specifically on the plant and tools of the stores within building services. And the report is currently in draft, and with the head of service at the moment, with the conclusion being unsound as the internal controls were concluded to be such. The main reason being the procedures that are currently in place were not currently kept up to date and are currently not being followed. There is an action plan currently in place and being actioned by the service, with action dates very imminent within the next few weeks to implement all of the agreed actions. So swift action has been taken and appropriate action has also been taken by the services, but specifically in relation to the plant and handling of the tool service.
Well, do you have any further questions from that?
No, that's absolutely fine, Stuart. Thank you for that clarification there, and it's good to see that that's been identified and the actions taken have been so swift to resolve that. The only other question that I did have was on the procurement side of things, and that's where it's saying it requires improvements, but it's got report to committee October 24. Can I just ask, did a report come to us?
Well, could you just refer to the page or the item number on that?
It's the same appendix.
Right.
It's the same appendix 9, but it's the second last item on the grid. Procurement. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yep, thank you, Chair. Yes, I can confirm that went to the Audit Committee, so not the Governance and Risk Committee, but that report and procurement was presented as a separate item to the Audit Committee in October. And the Corporate Procurement Manager was in attendance at the committee and provided an update on the actions and the progress that was taken for that specific audit.
Thank you, Stuart.
Thank you for that.
Pauline, any further questions?
So that's me, Damon.
Thank
Thank
you
you
very
very much.
I'll now pass over to Linda.
Similar question, Stuart, on the building services plant and hand tools. I've listened to what you've said. Does that mean that the in-draft report is coming back? You've just got to be confirmed. Will it be coming back to the next audit committee in your view?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I can confirm that the report will be finalised by close of play today. Therefore, that meets the deadline for this week's Audit Committee. Therefore, it will be on the agenda for the forthcoming Audit Committee at the end of this month.
Yeah. And go to Pauline's question about procurement. If the report came to audit in October, and it requires further improvement, when will that improved report come to us?
All recommendations that are ranked as high are included in the Council's risk management software IdeaGen, and they're monitored via that process, and it's included in the intern audit plan for 25-26 as a review of all of our follow-up work. So that audit will be undertaken this financial year. There's no set timescale for when that follow-up will be undertaken, but it will be this financial year, and progress is reported back to the audit committee of any outstanding actions that are not complete. So any actions that are not complete will be reported back to the audit committee.
Yeah, it just gives you a wee bit, uncertainty when it says requires improvement, and we're not getting a report for quite some time. But if there was anything that was detrimental to the service, you would come back to us very quickly, wouldn't you?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, as I say, confirm them. Anything that's ranked as requires improvement will be as a result of a high finding. Anything that's a result as a high finding will be ranked as either requires improvement or unsound. Therefore, we will record that in the IdeaGen system and monitor the implementation of that.
One last question, if that's all right. I see that you've put information governance policy and risk assessment and training for council-wide, effective, it requires improvement. Have you any identified dates for that? Or is that into the next session?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, and this the same way as the procurement audit, that will be reviewed and followed up during the next financial year. As I say, there's no specific timescale on that, but there is a high finding. The high finding will be followed up by the internal audit team to make sure that's implemented.
Will it be made mandatory for all members to have this training?
Thank you.
Level, I don't think we can introduce as mandatory training. However, I will ask. Sorry about that, did you? I'm not sure that was picked up. Yeah, apart from the legislative committees that we have, planning and licensing, I don't believe that kind of training can be made mandatory. But I might ask the governance managers to confirm that, Linda.
Advisable for all members to undertake it.
Thank you, Chair. There are certain statutory and regulatory regimes that do require mandatory training. There is no such mandatory training requirement for this committee. If the Council wished to make training mandatory for members of this committee, it could do so, but that would require to be implemented via the scheme of administration, which would require to be agreed by full Council.
Thank you.
Leslie, thank you for that, and I'd certainly agree with you. It would be advisory, Linda, so thank you very much. Any further questions? Do we have any other questions from committee? Don't see any. Short one for me, and I'm not just asking this because the Chief Executive is in the room. However, your team is certainly light on resource and certainly delivers an excellent service as it has done for some years. The reviews on the audit that you undertake, is the number determined by the strength of your team or by what is required by the Council?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, the internal audit plan is specifically with the resources available within the internal audit team. And the internal audit resources haven't been impacted with any recent activity in terms of staff promotions and some restructuring. So there was no issue with regards to the internal audit plan. The resources are fully intact to deliver the internal audit plan, so there's currently no issues with that. The real impact has seen from the counter fraud side of things, where we have adopted a risk-based, priority-based process to deal with that, but that's not something that's impacted the internal audit side.
Stuart, thank you very much for that. That is reassuring. If we have no further questions, do we have any comments? I don't see any. Committee happy to note the recommendation on the report. Thank you. We move, therefore, to item 5, which is the Corporate Governance Annual Governance Statement, and I'll pass over to our Governance Manager, Leslie Montague.
Thank you, Chair. This report presents the Annual Governance Statement for approval. The Council's corporate governance arrangements are maintained in accordance with delivering good governance. That is a framework and guidance issued by the Chartered Institute of Public Finance and Accountancy and the Society of Local Authority Chief Executives in 2016. The framework sets 7 principles of corporate governance. It calls for an ongoing evidence-based approach with at least annual reporting to members and the public. The framework's output feeds into the statutory process for publication, audit and approval of the Council's accounts and financial statements and wider governance arrangements. After considering the Audit, Risk and Counter-Fraud Manager's review of the system of internal control, this committee approves an annual governance statement prepared by the Governance Manager for inclusion in the Council's accounts. The unaudited accounts are considered at Audit Committee and then submitted for audit and published for inspection and objection by the end of June. The Auditor's report and the final accounts are then considered by Council and approved for signature and publication before the end of September. The audit report is referred on to this committee and to Audit Committee for scrutiny of the parts within their remits. The annual governance statement is informed by the review of the system of internal control, annual compliance statements, the updated local code of corporate governance, and work carried out to progress governance issues identified in previous years' reporting. These are considered in turn. The committee is therefore asked to note the information in the annual review of the system of internal control, which was separately reported today, the annual compliance statements contained at Appendix 2, the local code of corporate governance contained at Appendix 3, the progress on governance issues contained at Appendix 4, and the conclusion and assurance that the Council's corporate governance standards have been substantially met in 2024-25, and thereafter to approve the annual governance statement contained at Appendix 1 to form part of the Council's accounts. Committee is further asked to authorise officers to update the statement where appropriate to reflect changes in circumstances prior to its approval for signature in September 2025, and to note that the table in Appendix 4 will be updated to reflect today's meeting and incorporate the new issues identified for 2025-26, with progress reported to committee at its meeting in December 2025. There are officers present across services today who would be happy to take questions. Thank you, Chair.
Leslie, thank you. Do we have any questions from committee? Pauline?
Just one wee question, if I may. It's on page 14, so before all the appendices and that kind of thing. It's 15.2 and a reference to the use of artificial intelligence. What is, or can you give any idea of what the up-to-date status of that is at the moment within council?
Thank you, Pauline. I'll ask for Leslie Henderson to come in on that.
We do have some areas where we're piloting the use of artificial intelligence. There's a pilot in social policy and one in roads services at this point in time. We also have a draft policy on the council's use of artificial intelligence that has been prepared, that will come to a future meeting of the council executive, go through the PDSP process and then on to council executive. But equally, we're also looking at how we might extend the use of artificial intelligence to try and drive through efficiencies. So that's work in progress at this time.
Leslie, thank you. Pauline?
Thank you for that update, Leslie. Very interesting. I'll keep
Any further comment? Any further questions, sorry?
Not from me.
Anne, please, over to you.
Thank you. And Leslie, thanks for a very comprehensive report. I've got a few things that I'm seeking to clarify, and I've sent you a list of these outside the meeting, but I would like to just pull out a couple for this particular meeting. On page 4, 5.2, we say with 7 issues remaining. 2 are described at that point in the papers, and there's a full 7 mentioned on page 12 and 13. Then Appendix 4 has 10 open issues. Are these all the same?
Leslie?
Thank you, Chair. The open issues referred to in Appendix 4 are the same as those 7 remaining issues. In respect of those issues identified in Appendix 4, where all work has been concluded or where the initial governance concern has been addressed and control assumed elsewhere, these are marked as completed. Subject to committee's views today, those will be removed from the list when next reported. Those where further work is required are shown as ongoing and are included in the list of governance issues to be taken forward into 2025-26. Thank you, Chair.
Anne, does that satisfy that question?
Yep. In Appendix 1, 2.3, can we say how we define substantially? Can I find that somewhere?
I'm over to you again, Leslie.
Thank you, Chair. There is no definition of substantially set out in the CIPFE guidance. The summary and assurances noted are those given by the governance manager. In providing that assurance, they have drawn on the evidence found or described in the internal audit opinion by the Audit, Risk and Counter-Fraud Manager on the effectiveness of the framework of governance, risk management and control set out in Section 7 of the Annual Governance Statement, the Annual Compliance Statements and associated standalone reports in relation to significant statutory regimes and corporate policies and procedures. The refreshed evidence-based logo code of corporate governance and the progress made in the reporting year on areas of governance concern. Information and conclusions from those sources are summarised and illustrated at the end of the statement.
Leslie, thank you. And again, Anne, does that satisfy the question?
Yep, thank
Do we have any further questions?
Couple.
Please, over to you.
Appendix 1, 4.1, the post that was having to be re-advertised, does that pose any level of risk, and does it have an impact to the overall stability of the team?
Yeah, I'll bring in Leslie Henderson for that one. Leslie.
Job title there, just so that I can refer to it quickly.
Closely looking for it now, Leslie, if you bear with us.
So is this the Director of Finance that you're referring to, Anne?
Yeah.
It is, yes.
Yes, sorry, Anne, yes. So obviously that post has been re-advertised, the post has closed, Senior Officer Appointment Committee dates have been scheduled, and there are candidates that we're taking forward to that. In the interim, arrangements have been made to ensure that the service duties are covered in advance of any appointment being made.
Leslie, thank you.
Okay. And just one other thing, in terms of, just check my points. Appendix 1, 4.1, the last sentence, I just wondered if that date was wrong. It referred to 2024.
Leslie, over to yourself.
Thank you, Chair. I think it is noted there that the post of the governance manager was appointed in August, and that the governance manager did not actually retire in post until November. The dates stated are correct, in that the post was advertised and filled prior to the governance manager's retirement.
Thank you, Leslie. And any further questions?
Last one.
Thank you.
Appendix 3, D1, the citizen-led inspection. I just wondered if the narrative on that page should be the same as in B3 for the citizen-led inspection, so that both are updated the same.
And Leslie, back to yourself.
Thank you, Chair. Having reviewed the relevant sections, it is agreed that they should be the same for continuity, and that the wording in D1 in relation to citizen-led inspection should be preferred, as it provides an updated position in respect of monitoring and reporting on the position via PDSP, and I'll make those necessary changes. Thank you, Chair.
That's great, Anne. Thank you very much for that. Any further questions?
Nope.
Thank you, Anne. Do we have any further questions? Linda.
Page 4, 5.2. It's saying that an overdue root and branch review of the Council's relationship with the Alio West Lothian Leisure. Just very simply, is why is this overdue, and what details of the additional option that's been explored? Could we have details of it, or is it very sensitive, or how is it going?
Linda, thank you for the question. I'll ask Alan Cahoon to come in on that. Alan.
Yes, Chair. I can perhaps give a little bit more context for members. Part 2 of the review requires a strategic options appraisal of the delivery model options for leisure provision in West Lothian. And most commonly for local authorities, this would involve comparison and assessment of the status quo, which here in West Lothian is delivery via an arm's length external organisation, that's West Lothian Leisure, against direct delivery, which would be described as in-house, and possibly even against open market contracting approaches. Through work undertaken by West Lothian Leisure as part of their 3-year financial planning, and also reflecting on different delivery model approaches across the UK, a potential variation to the Alio delivery model has recently been identified that could lead to there being additional efficiencies in the model going forward. Because of that, officers are currently investigating what changes may be required to the framework of agreements that we have in place with West Lothian Leisure to facilitate this. That would include an exploration of potential opportunities, but also risks and implications. Officers feel that it's contingent that we need to do our diligence on that as a potential option, and then make sure that we layer that into the future strategic options appraisal going forward. So those are live investigations just now. We expect to have more detail across the recess. We'll continue to report progress on that into the West Lothian Leisure Advisory Committee, and as is already identified in the report, we are targeting a report to come back on the options appraisal end to end into Council Executive later in the financial year.
Alan, thank you very much. Linda.
That's great. I have another question. It's on page 80, and I'm just really looking for clarification. The wording states that, sorry, I'm looking at the wrong page. Under scrutiny committees, the scrutiny is established through remits and powers of PDSPs and committees in the scheme of administration. Training is offered to members, chairs of the Audit Committee and Governance and Risk Committee to be from out with the administration group. I'm really looking for clarification of that point.
Okay, Linda, I'll ask the governance manager to come in. What in particular are you looking for clarification on?
Well, I've always been led to believe that you're part of the administration.
Okay, well, I'll let the governance...
As you receive the chairmanship for this committee and audit is the other one.
I'll let the governance manager come in, but whoever's led you to believe that, I think you'll find was inaccurate. But I'll let the governance manager confirm this.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. What is written there is correct in terms of the scheme of administration. The Chair of Audit Committee and Governance and Risk Committee required to be from out with the administration group. The administration group in this council is a minority Labour administration, and those posts are correctly filled by those out with the administration group.
Leslie, thank you very much. Any further questions?
Clarification. Thank you.
Any further questions, Linda?
No.
Thank you very much. Do we have any other questions? Members, some of the areas I was looking at have been covered. I have one which is actually the very last point on page 96, which is the workforce management plan. We have some services that haven't returned their succession planning, and we have the date of return by the 30th of September. I'm looking for maybe a bit of reassurance that this is not going to be a negative impact to the council, and that services will achieve the request that they're asked to in timely manner, and what impact this is having by returning not until September. So Leslie Henderson, I'll come to you on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, we do have succession planning arrangements in place, and services are required to submit responses to HR services, and that's subject to scrutiny at corporate level. I wouldn't see that the non-return of these would have a detrimental impact, because services the HR team continue to work with the service to make sure that there are appropriate recruitment, retention and other staffing programmes taken forward within the services to ensure that we have effective arrangements in place.
Thank you, Leslie. So, and the timing of, you're satisfied that they will achieve the timing?
Yes, and we can certainly make sure that work's done to support them in doing that.
Great, Leslie, thank you very much. Do we have any other questions? Do we have any comments? Don't see either. Is committee agreed to the recommendations on the paper? And heads nodding confirm that the 5 recommendations are agreed. Thank you very much. We now move to item 6, which is the high risks. And again, I will ask Stuart Saunders to speak to that. Stuart.
Thank you, Chair. This report sets out the Council's high risks. As stated in the report, all risks are assessed for impact and likelihood using a 5x5 risk matrix, and risks with a current score of 12 or more are considered to be high risks. The Council currently has 14 high risks in total. That's one fewer than reported to the committee in March. The Financial Plan 24-25 risk has materialised and has since been deactivated. Of the current 14 high risks, 2 have been assessed as having the highest possible risk score of 25, and these are risk SPC 005, increasing expenditure on commission care services for adults and older people resulting in significant budget overspend, and risk HCBS 004, overspend of allocated housing needs budget. Details of each of the 14 high risks are set out in Appendix 1, and Appendix 2 sets out the Council's standard risk assessment methodology. Chair, the committee is asked to review the Council's high risks. I'd be happy to take any questions. There are also officers present to take any questions in relation to the risks specific to their service area.
Stuart, thank you very much for the report. Committee, do we have any questions? Pauline, you're first then.
I've got a couple of questions. The first one is on, there's no page number on it, but it's HCBS 24002, spot 01A. And it's develop personal housing planning to improve the quality of housing options advice. That one, and it's just, do we have a timeline for that? So.
Thank you, Pauline. I think I will ask Sarah Kelly to come in on this.
Thank you, Chair. That's a measure that will roll year on year. Personal housing plans are something that we offer as part of prevention work. So whilst there'll be an end date in year, there's no end date to it in its totality. It's just part of the offering that we do around prevention work, and it will roll on year.
Thanks, Sarah, for that. And the other question that I had is actually just going back to the beginning. It's the longer one, which is why I left the second, and it's HCBS 004, overspend of allocated housing need budgets. Just in general, do we know how many empty properties we have overall in the county, and specifically how many are in the village of Bridgend? I ask that because I'm repeatedly advised by local people that there's a number of empty properties lying, and it's unclear whether they're voided for repairs or if they're temporary, waiting on people coming in, and if they could potentially, if they've been waiting on temporary people for a long time, is there not a consideration there to just put them back into general housing to get people that need homes into permanent homes? Just looking at, and I know that you've been doing some background work about how you manage that, but I just wanted a wee kind of update if that could be done. Sarah, thanks.
Thank you, Pauline. Sarah?
Thank you, Chair. Bridgend statistics I don't have on me, but I can forward them on to you. It's part of the turnover report that went to last month's PDSP, so the word totals will be in there, but I'll forward that on. In terms of context, Bridgend is actually one of the harder to let areas. It quite often sees refusals come back for properties due to transport links, due to it being in the outskirts of the county. In general, the demand for Bridgend is for people who were born or raised there. So it's not an area that attracts a huge amount of demand. What we do is we do turn the property back to mainstream after a period of time to avoid it being temporary tenancy for too long. And if it is sitting for void and at a high refusal rate for too long, that's something the senior management team will actively consider and approve. So we will turn them back over to mainstream if someone is looking for one.
Thank you.
Then just another wee question based on that. If somebody is placed into temporary accommodation in village and against the norm, they actually like it there and want to make that home their home, is there a means to relay that to the housing team for consideration?
It is something that we'll consider. We do have to be mindful of the length of stay in temporary accommodation so that we don't facilitate queue jumping per se if people have only been in a short period of time. But it's something in the suite of options that we'll consider. If it's hard to let, there's no demand for it, someone is content there, their kids are in school or they've got good transport links themselves, we will take that into consideration. And we have flipped temporary tenancies to mainstream in that area.
Okay, thanks, Sarah. That's great to know.
Thanks, Sarah. Any further questions, Pauline?
No, that's me. Thank you.
Linda, over to you.
Thank you. Sarah, on it's to do with HCBS 24002, which is one of the two red risks. My question's really quite simple. Why is it so far below the target? And what actions are being taken? And it has the organisational change processes in the service had something to do with this, because it was to be delivered on the 31st of March 2025. That was the due date. Sorry, 31st of May 25. And only 50% has been really. Why is it so far below the target? It's on page. I've actually numbered them. It's on my page 3, and it's also referred to in page 9, I think. Just going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Thank you, Linda. I'll ask Sarah to come to that one. She finds the paper. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you, Chair. I managed to find it. So the improving housing options actually relates to the question asked by the other member. Housing options is a tool that we use on an ongoing basis. So we leave it at 50% because it's always going to be running. It could equally be 100% because it's something that just is ongoing throughout the year. When someone comes in the front door, we immediately look at their housing options and if there are other tenures that they can consider other than council housing and what we can do to assist them.
But you've got the statement in there, will be further developed and implementation of the organisational change processes.
Yes,
in the service.
We've moved some people around the service, but housing options is now considered by a wider group of staff. Happy to update that note if it's helpful in understanding that.
Yeah. Other question is also on the we update on the 85% of deliver the 4 million new build supported accommodation provision for young people. I know it's had its problems, but do you have an update on that? It's to be delivered by the 30th of June 25.
So that date will need an update. I can speak broadly around it. It's really a question for Marjorie Mackey, who's involved in the construction of that site. Yeah. As you know, the company who we were using, Modular Construction, went into administration at the tail end of last year. What I would say is that Marjorie's team worked very quickly to appoint a new contractor. They're with Ogilvy now. And I believe that discussions are ongoing about moving that site on, and we're expecting to get the first houses, which thankfully are the young people supported accommodation, in December this year. So I'll arrange for that to be updated.
That's excellent. Because when you pass the site, all you see is your roofs. The roofs are built, but there's nothing to put them on. But that's great. That's good news.
Thanks for the update, Sarah. Any further questions, Linda?
No, thanks.
Anne, over to yourself.
In relation to SPCC 005, the second statement in the current controls, this review is needed. It's probably going to be helped by technology. However, from my perspective, there's an addition to that in terms of the impact on the people who maybe are moving to a more technology-based support system, and also potentially their carers. And I just wondered if it would be appropriate to have something within that that shows how we're managing the situation around that. Because if that's not managed, there's negative impacts onto other services provided by the third sector and also by other services internally.
And thank you for that. And I'll ask Robin Allen to come in. Thank you, Robin.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, in relation to the use of technology-enabled care, anybody who is in receipt of such a type of care are subject to regular review and indeed an assessment, obviously, before any such provision is provided. I'm happy to reflect and update the controls to ensure that we're consideration given to the impact on carers as noted by the member.
Robin, thank you. Anne?
Yeah, thank you. And I suppose it's also the negative impact when that goes to press and all the additional resource that it takes up to manage all that. So something in and around that as well.
Robin, that would be useful, I think.
Sure.
And any further questions?
Yeah, just in terms of the last point, we now have a clear transition policy in place, and I really welcome that. That's great news. But what I would like to see is something in there for those that will not benefit from this new transition policy and are currently in a system where they are having real problems within that transition process. And particularly this year, because there's been an extra large number of people in that transition phase.
And thank you for that. I'll ask Robin to come in on that as well. Robin.
Yes, Chair, happy to reflect that within the controls. The transitions policy is, as noted within the controls, is in place, and there are a series of arrangements in place to help support and the assessment process, but also to ensure that the necessary level of support for those individuals that are transitioning from children's services to adults is in place to meet their assessed need.
Robin, thank you. And satisfied with that?
Thank you.
Any further questions, Anne?
No.
Do we have any further questions from committee? Any comments from committee? I think the only one for me first is, in future, could we get, rather than people having to flick through their pages looking for the relevant reference, is it possible that the page is numbered in future so we can refer to that? Makes it much easier to see what we're looking at. Any further comments, Pauline?
I just wanted to acknowledge the depth of work undertaken by the various different teams in these pieces of work, because it can be quite complex and frustrating to bring together, particularly in a difficult climate, when we're thinking of housing, ASN and care and all the rest of it. So I just wanted to recognise that. Thank you.
Paul, I'm sure we all share your comments there. Any further comments? Any committee happy to take on board the recommendations of the paper? Thank you very much. We move on to item 8, which is the Risk Management Annual Report. And Stuart, again, over to yourself.
Thank you, Chair. The Risk Management Annual Report sets out the main work carried out during 24-25 in regards to both risk management and business continuity planning. My risk management role consists largely of providing advice, and I work with services on an ongoing basis to assist them in reviewing their risks by attending their service management team meetings and by convening the Risk Management Working Group, which contains representatives from all services. Section 2 provides details of the robust risk management reporting arrangements currently in place, not only to this committee, but also to the Council's Executive Management Team, Corporate Management Team and the Corporate Governance Board. And Section 3 of the annual report outlines the business continuity work undertaken during the year, such as the annual update of the Corporate Business Continuity Plan, the testing that was undertaken in October, and the business continuity training provided by Zurich, the Council's risk management consultant, in January. In regards to performance, Section 4 of the report provides details of risk management performance indicators, and I am pleased to report that performance in all areas is green. In particular, 100% of all plans of WLC1 activities were reviewed and updated during the year, and all services are thanked for their engagement and efforts in this specific area. Details of all performance indicators are summarised in Appendix A. Chair of the committee is invited to note the Risk Management Annual Report for 24-25, and I'd be happy to take any questions.
Stuart, thank you very much for the report. Can I open this up to committee for any questions? Pauline?
Thanks, Chair. In respect of page 6, the first one, HCB 4, do we have any stats of why we have seen increases in our homelessness? By that I mean, is it a rise in relationship breakups, abuse, young people starting out and just looking for homes, unexpected pregnancy, that kind of thing? And has there been any significant type of impact from asylum seekers coming into the country as well? And by that I mean they're currently housed in hotels or bed and breakfast. So once they come out of that part of the process at one stage or another, is that leading to an increase in our homeless provision?
Well, thank you very much for your question. I've noted that Sarah Kelly's now left us, which is all my fault. I should have asked that. Officers should have stayed until after item 9. So I'm not 100% sure it's fair to ask any of the officers to ask that question now, but I think it's a very valid one. But I don't think we have anyone from housing.
Take it out of the committee, Sarah, and then ask her to share it with.
That's exactly what I was going to say there. So we'll have this recorded and asked after the meeting, get it shared around committee. Thank you, Pauline. And as I mentioned, that's my fault for allowing Sarah Kelly to leave at this point.
Right.
Do we have any further questions?
We do, yeah.
Please turn on, Pauline.
So in the next one is on the next part, SBC 005, increase in expenditure on commissioned care services for adults. Have we started to see a rise in the cost of care following the national insurance increases, or is it too early to see that potentially?
Thank you, Pauline. And again to Robert Allen.
Thank you very much. In relation to the care at home provision that we have, generally speaking, that comes from our framework arrangements that are in place that has a set hourly rate in relation to that. In relation to other providers, we have seen some changes in relation to the costs of care, but at this moment in time, it remains being closely monitored to understand what the overall impact of that will be, Chair.
Robin, thank you very much. Pauline?
I've got another question from page 10, and it's mainstream schools, physical or verbal incidents towards staff. It's one of the things that I continue to be quite concerned about, the level of physical and verbal incidents within our schools. And though the indicator is showing that there's been a reduction, are we continually reassessing and innovating, changing our practices to try and find a way that helps us improve this risk factor?
Thank you, Pauline. Greg Welsh, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. And the short answer is yes, Chair. We're continually reviewing our approaches to how we support a high number of our young children who can present with dysregulated behaviour. There was an internal audit on the services mitigations and controls, and that came out as effective, as reported in one of the earlier papers considered by committee this afternoon. The Education Services Service Improvement Plan was also considered by Education PDSP recently, with these two high risks being considered, and it's a feature of our Education Health and Safety Committee. We have recently also reviewed and refreshed our positive relationships policy that was approved by Education Executive last month, and that will be implemented from August coming. And that builds on from the very good national practice that officers are continually learning from and bringing into the authority, but also taking the very good practice that exists within the local authority and sharing that across all of our schools as well. So it is something that's kept under regular review. And as I say, the training programme developed for staff is also continually reviewed in response to that changing level of need within our schools, Chair.
Great, thank you very much. Pauline, does that satisfy the question?
Another wee question probably for Greg again. And it's in relation to EDO5, additional support needs. And again, although we're starting to see a downward trend, are there any specific areas that we're identifying that require priority actions to be taken to try and improve or lengthen the continued improvement that we're seeing in this side of things?
Thank you, Pauline. Greg?
Yes, Chair, as previously intimated, it's about responding to that changing level of need, both within our ASN specific schools, but also within our mainstream schools. The training plan that's been developed for staff next year is responsive to an increasing number of children, for example, with a diagnosed neurodivergence, and some of the de-escalation strategies that staff are employing to support a number of our children. So as I say, that downward trend that we can see in the next paper, the health and safety statistics, is certainly something that we're continually to work on with our staff and reviewing that regularly. That, though, does come with its own significant challenges in terms of that level of need nationally as well as locally continues to grow. So it's how we respond as a service to that growing need and adapt the service to that growing need as well.
Greg, thank you very much. Pauline?
Thanks, Greg. And that actually links into the Education Committee when Christina McSween was talking about the additional £1.1 million in funding that is being deployed into that area to help. So that's really, really good to hear. Final question is on WM005, failure of waste disposal contractor. I just wondered if that could be explained a wee bit better, please.
Well, I'll pass it to David Moll. David.
Thank you, Chair. The contractor who handles 3 of our major waste streams, that being our residual waste, our garden and food waste and our bulky waste, entered into administration in March of this year. But following company restructuring, a new company structure was established and contracts are continuing to be undertaken. There are some price and business continuity risks that we are managing as part of that process. At this very moment in time, most of that is contained under commercial confidentiality. So I'm limited to discuss them further at this moment, but should a need arise, I will report back to committee in due course.
David, thank you very much. Any further follow-up questions from that, Pauline?
No, that's absolutely fine. That's great, David. Thank you.
Very much. Do we have any further questions? Don't see any. Do we have any comments? None. Also, committee happy to take on the recommendation of paper 8. I beg your pardon, Councillor Kennett, I was too quick there to close you off. Please comment.
Fine. It's just really to recognise the significant reductions that's been made in the 2 areas of insufficient availability of beds to meet service demand, and also in the handling of the finance. I can just find it again. It's just to compliment the officers and all the hard work that's gone into this, because we do recognise that there has been a tremendous amount of work to try and bring these risks of reduction into, rigidly.
Agree completely, Linda.
So, failure to deliver annual budget.
Agree with the comments. I'm sure the rest of the committee do. If there are no further comments, committee is happy to take on board the recommendation of the paper. We therefore move on to item 9, which is the management of health and safety, and over to Kim Hardy. Kim.
Thank you, Chair. This paper is a standing report that provides the committee with an overview of recent health and safety information and activity across all services. Section D3 provides details on the outcomes of recent visits carried out by the Health and Safety Executive. Section D4 provides further information on incidents that were reported to the Health and Safety Executive under our statutory obligations of the RIDDOR regulations. Appendix 1 to this report provides a breakdown of incidents recorded in our online management system Sphera, and also of employers' liability claims settled within this reporting period. The information contained within this report is shared on a monthly basis with the corporate management team, service management teams, and through a number of forums with our trade union colleagues as part of our ongoing monitoring and evaluation of health and safety performance. Chair, I'm happy to answer any questions, and there are also representatives present from services for any service-specific points the committee may wish to raise.
Kim, thank you very much for the report. Committee, do we have any questions? Pauline?
Thanks again, Chair. Just a wee bit clarification on a couple of things, please. Incidents by cause, which is table 2, I think, if I'm reading it correctly. Just firstly, a wee comment. It's nice where it's got bites. Nice to see that has reduced by about half. It's the one that kind of stuck out there. But hit by moving, flying or falling objects. I'm just a bit curious about this one. Do we know if that is generally because of, things that are falling off shelves and stuff like that cause injury, or is it where it's human intervention, if you like, and somebody's picking something up and actually throwing it? Do we keep that level of detail?
Kim, over to yourself.
Thanks, Chair. I don't have that level of information to hand. It would be possible for us to get that information from a reporting system, but it would probably take us a bit of time to go through each individual incident. So hit by a moving object tends to be a variety of objects, if that makes sense.
Okay, thank you. Next one is on verbal incidents in table 3. It's just continues to be, and I'm sure Greg will agree, quite soul destroying to see that verbal incidents in education are still continuing to climb. But having spoken to Greg earlier, it's good to see that there's some interventions coming into that. In respect of the HCBS verbal incidents, do we know if these are officer behaviour or customer behaviour incidents at all? Is my question. So is it complaints that we're receiving about officers being verbally not nice, or is it complaints from officers perhaps about customers not being nice and maybe having to designate that house perhaps as one that, be cautious when you go, kind of thing?
Pauline, thank you. Kim, I'll let you come into that one for them.
Again, I don't have specific figures to hand, but from looking at these stats on a month-to-month basis, I would say the majority of these will be towards employees, if that makes sense.
Okay, thank you. And final question. I'm sure I keep asking this question, but it's on Appendix 5, near misses. Are we any clearer to understanding what a near miss is? Because we are continuing to see a rise on them. So because we're seeing a rise, are we having to look at what the near misses are? Are there interventions that we're going to have to start looking at to try and see a downward trend on those?
And again, Kim, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. So in terms of near miss incidents, we actually view those being reported as a positive thing because they are an incident that did not happen but could have resulted in an incident. So for health and safety, for us to see those continually rise means that people are reporting what potentially could have been an incident. That allows us to look at the factors behind that and then potentially putting in steps to prevent the incident that could have happened from happening. All employees are encouraged to report all near-miss incidents.
Thank you, Kim.
That makes perfect sense. Thank you for that. That's great. Thank you.
Thank you, Molly.
That's me.
Can I just take us back to something you mentioned there, Pauline, which is back to education and the reported verbal incidents. Obviously, a substantial increase we have in our current year. We have for a while now discussed it, and it's been taken on board positively that the reporting has improved, which has helped pick this up. Is this just the case now, or are we now at the level where the reporting we expect has reached its peak? It is now the actual incidents that are increasing. Great, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, we've done a lot of work in partnership with an Education, Health and Safety Committee with representation from both the teaching and the non-teaching trade unions around the importance of reporting incidences. A little bit like Kim's description around the near misses when we're looking at prompt and effective interventions from staff where we can de-escalate a situation. That may mean that where a child has been overly verbally aggressive towards a member of staff, with the correct interventions, we're then able to resolve it and move forward. So similarly, when we're looking at the disconnect between verbal, physical or other more impactful, if you like, in terms of physically impactful, not diminishing the impact of verbal situations for individual members of staff, that speed at which staff are able to de-escalate situations will possibly as well just see an increase in verbal incidences in their isolation. However, again, it comes down to, I suppose, the big jump year on year. It's comparator data there, but in the scale of education services and the number of young people and the number of interactions happening daily, we're not going to be able to eradicate those, but it's making sure the staff have got the right tools and feel supported when they're dealing with some of our children and young people who do become dysregulated.
Greg, thank you very much for that. I appreciate it. Do we have any further questions? Linda?
Thanks. I just have a quick question on page 2. It's D3, enforcement on HSA. It's to be welcomed that, the HSC came for a planned inspection at Harrismuir. In the report, it said that the visit went very well. We've got details of that, but there's no details of the actual outcome of the inspection. And I was just wondering, how did it go?
Thank you, Linda. I'll ask Kim to come on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. As noted in the report, the visit did go very well in terms of the inspection. Mm-hmm. There were a couple of minor points raised by the Health and Safety Executive. Those, an overview of those are provided within the report. So overall, the inspection went well. Thank you, Chair.
Kim, thank you very much. Linda, any further?
No.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Do we have any further questions? Do we have any comments? Committee, happy to take on board the recommendation of the paper. Thank you. And any officers who are now not involved in future reports, they can stay if they wish, or they can certainly depart should they wish. We move on to item 10, which is the management of health and safety risks within operational services. And David Mole, over to yourself.
Thank you, Chair. The report provides an overview of how health and safety risks are managed within operational services and provides the scorecard for risks in Appendix 1. By way of context, operational services works across 6 functional areas with approximately 1,400 staff, the majority of whom are undertaking frontline activities. The service takes health and safety very seriously. We operate a wide range of plant and equipment and work in potentially dangerous environments, whether that be repairing roads, collecting and disposing of waste, dealing with snow and ice, or dealing with dangerous trees. There were 156 incidents involving operational services staff last year, an improvement on the previous year. Of these incidents, the largest number were in facilities management and involved slips and trips or minor accidents in school kitchens. There were 42 incidents in waste, 22 in roads, 33 in nets, 2 in fleet and 5 in passenger transport. To manage risk, we have 330 different risk assessments covering the array of activities undertaken by the service. Some examples are set out in section D.4 of the report. These assessments identify potential hazards and are all regularly reviewed and signed off by managers. Safe working procedures or safe systems of work set out procedures for staff to follow to complete tasks safely, and these are also reviewed regularly and signed off by staff. Finally, across the service, providing staff with the correct personal protective equipment is very important, as this is a barrier to reducing the risks of serious injury within the service. Chair, the appendix sets out the 29 health and safety risks across the service. I'm happy to say that 19 are assessed as amber and 10 as green, which gives me confidence they are being managed effectively. I'm happy to take any questions.
David, thank you very much for the report. Can I ask the committee, do we have any questions? Pauline, over to yourself.
Thanks, Chair. On page 1, or appendix 1, should I say, NLCS 004 unsafe trees resulting in death or injury to a member of public. I know that the current risk has been halved down to 10, which is a really positive result. But I do want to ask if to what extent Storm Owen back at the beginning of the year has affected things overall in regards to the safety of trees, because it did such extensive damage that to see such a positive mark. Just a bit of clarification, David, please.
David, thank you.
Happy to take that, Chair. Yep, Storm Island was a significant event for the whole service, but particularly the woodland management team. There was estimated there was about 2,000 trees were felled as part of that event. And that meant we had to prioritise how we dealt with those incidents, and that's exactly what we did. We triaged the work that was required. So trees that were blocking carriageways were a threat to life of drivers or pedestrians were dealt with first. And then we moved down the line from there with our other woodland and paths and country parks. That took up a significant effort in probably the 6 or 7 weeks following the storm. I think I can say now we're just about fully caught up with the backlog of that, and we're back on to dealing with the normal programme. We're dealing with ash dieback and just the sort of things that happen on a day-to-day basis.
David, thank you. Pauline?
Just answered my follow-up question there. You're just about up to date, so that's really, really welcoming to hear there. And the other question what I had was on page 3, the NLCS 011 failure to control fly tipping. Again, it's good to see positive improvement in that, but the public perception out there is still very much that fly tipping is on the increase. It's certainly something that I'm aware of on the roads as I travel in from Linlithgow to Livingston. There's an increase actually in some of the back roads just now. So can you just explain a wee bit more about why we might be seeing an improvement at this level, but it's being matched against a perceived increase on the public side of it as well? And that obviously affects the inquiries that we're getting in as elected members.
David?
Yeah, Chair, fly tipping is something that as a council we have to deal with, and also for private landlord owners they have to deal with as well. And there is a public perception that it is a problem and a growing problem. Certainly from a council land point of view, I think the statistics don't show that it is necessarily increasing, but it's certainly still an issue for us. In terms of the specific health and safety risk involved with fly tipping, what we're most concerned about is the types of materials that are often found fly tipped, and certainly my officers are of the opinion that the majority of fly tipping is of a commercial nature, and to that end we're very concerned when we see things like materials that may include asbestos sitting at the side of the road or in a field. So we work very hard to manage it. Where we find evidence of an individual or an organisation that's fly tipped, we will do our very best to take that to a fixed penalty notice or a prosecution. But the team worked very hard to deal with it.
Thank you, David.
Just as a quick follow-up to that, David, because that's very interesting to hear that, and thank you. But the other thing that I've heard when you mentioned commercial operators there, and that's very much the problem. But I've also had a number of questions raised and complaints raised about the inability of commercial operators and of people who've maybe just had their bathrooms done, kitchens done, whatever, and they're getting rid of the stuff themselves in vans, trailers, whatever, but they can't get access to the council recycling centres to let out. There seems to be a bit of a glitch maybe isn't the right word. They're not able to, you can only book 2 weeks in advance and they can't get a spot to get their trailers or work vans in. So is that something that could be looked at alongside? Because if we can make more space available to them, it would suggest that potentially less would get dumped.
David.
Okay, the first point to make is around commercial waste. So commercial waste is not allowed to be taken to our household civic community sites. That is, there are lots of commercial organisations there that will deal with commercial waste. In terms of those households that wish to use our civic community sites, again, there are spaces there. We've got 5 sites that are open. Amongst the 5 that are open 7 days a week, there are spaces there. There is a booking system, but that you may not necessarily get your first preference. But if you're determined to take something to one of our sites, you will get a booking. That all being said, Chair, we are happy to look at any tweaks we think we can make to the booking systems, and particularly we are looking just now at the issue of households that may have vans or trailers and whether we can alter some of the access to allow to give them a wee bit more of an opportunity to use our sites. So I will take that back to the team.
Thank you. I think that'll be welcomed, Pauline.
That would indeed be welcomed, David, so I very much appreciate that. But just going back to one point there where you said commercial vehicles shouldn't be going into the tip. So where is it, just so that I'm clearer, where is it that they need to offload their rubbish? Because I'm quite sure they are probably some of the people who are trying to get into the domestic slots, maybe with an unmarked van, which then prevents somebody domestic getting in.
Chair, there are any number of private waste disposal companies that operate up and down the land. I'm not going to name any of them, right, but some of them will be the same companies that we dispose of our waste to. So there is plenty of opportunity in the market.
Be aware of that as part of their business plan, if you like. Perfect. Thank you very much, David. Appreciate it.
Pauline, anything else?
No, that was me.
Are there any further questions from Ms. Harry?
Thanks, Chair. So, I was going to ask a question about the PVGs. Now, I recently found myself once again having to go through a PVG check. Now, I now have been through that, would you believe it, the amount of organisations 6 times. 6 times I've been asked exactly the same questions. 6 times I've given exactly the same information, and yet you have to do it. One of the parent councils in Bathgate are very concerned that they are now having to go through the PVG. Everybody in the parent council, even if they have no direct contact with the children, still have to do it. So what is my question? That's a couple of points. What's my question? My question is, with the recent changes very hastily implemented, I must say, about PVG checks, and, you know, again, as I say, 6 times I've gone through it, some other people will be the same. Is that going to have any impact? Do we see any impact in council? You're saying a risk if someone isn't PVG checked. There might be someone that says, well, you know, I have 2 or 3 of these, I don't need to do it again. But in the eyes of the law, personally, I don't agree with it, but in the eyes of the law, they will have to do it again. Do we see a problem with that, given it's pretty hastily put in place? And I think a lot of organisations are maybe not too sure about it.
Thank you, Harry. Leslie, I'll ask yourself to come in first on this.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. In terms of PVG checks and the changes that are being implemented, the Council obviously has been planning for these. We have very robust arrangements in place as part of our recruitment processes to ensure that anybody working for the Council has if required, has a PVG check done in advance of them taking up post. So, you know, I don't see it being a risk. Obviously, if they are looking at, the member mentioned about having to do this a number of times, each organisation has their own responsibility to ensure that anybody working for them has a PVG check. So that may result in a number of times if you're involved in different organisations where a check is required.
Thank you, Leslie. Harry, do we have any further questions? I have one for myself, and it's almost, David, back to yourself. It's on page 4 of the appendix NLC S012, the failure to cut grass and resulting in road traffic accidents because of affecting sight lines. A little bit like the fly tapping, in that some of the comments we receive as councillors may not be agreed with by the council themselves and maybe a bit subjective, but we certainly, I'm sure the fellow councillors here on this committee with me have had a number of comments from the public saying that they quite often can't see road junctions and roundabouts. What is on measure to ensure this is in place? Is it purely a routine cycle of grass cutting, or is there anything more taken physically, visually by the council to ensure that this is prevented?
Chair, I'll answer the last bit of your question first. Yeah, there are regular inspections of our verges, and also we encourage members of the public, if they've got concerns, to report those to us. Sometimes that allows us to become aware of an issue quicker than our own teams having to go around the county. In regards to grass cutting, there are regular cycles and service standards put in place, but also there is the ability to do ad hoc work such as weed spraying. So whilst we've got service standards, there is provision in place should there be particular instances that require that bit more attention.
David, thank you for that. So yeah, so if it is reported through, the answer won't be coming back, oh, it's part of the cycle, it'll be done whenever it may be. It will be looked at, inspected and acted on accordingly.
Yes, we carry out regular inspection of these types of occurrences.
David, thank you very much. Does committee have any further questions? See any comments? Anne, sorry, I'm not sure if that was a question or if I was too quick to move on to comments. Or comments, over to you.
No, it's just a comment. With regards to fly tipping, I just want, and mine is a small picture window into the reporting system. Anything that I have personal experience of reporting, it's acted on very quickly.
And welcome that comment, and as I'm sure David and his team do as well. Thank you. Any further comments? Committee happy to take on board the recommendation of the paper. Thank you very much. We now move on to the committee, item 11, the committee self-assessment feedback, and I'll pass over to Leslie Montague.
Thank you, Chair. This report informs committee of the results of the committee's self-assessment exercise. Committee agreed on 9th April 2018 that a self-assessment exercise should be carried out on an annual basis. This followed a report by the Council's external auditor on the annual accounts for 2016-17. The auditors recommended annual self-assessment of effectiveness as best practice. At its meeting of 3rd March 2025, the committee approved a questionnaire to be circulated to its members to assess the committee's administrative arrangements and activity. The questions covered 5 areas, those being purpose and status, administrative arrangements and support, members' effectiveness, and committee remit and activities. The questionnaire was circulated electronically to enable the results to be gathered and presented anonymously. 4 members responded. A small number of narrative answers were given. Committee is invited to consider the responses and whether there are any issues that ought to be addressed at this stage. Responses are in the appendix. In comparison with the previous year's results, shows a high degree of consistency, with a very large majority of answers found in the strongly agree and agree categories. There are no obvious themes emerging and no indication of significant discontent. 4 areas worth highlighting are as set out in Part D4 of the report. Members may see other themes or concerns in the responses that they wish to discuss. The committee is asked to note the results of the self-assessment questionnaire completed by members and to identify any areas of concerns and to recommend any appropriate actions to address them. I'm happy to take any questions.
Leslie, thank you very much for this. Just before I open to any questions, I'd just like to carry on with the commentary on the paper. I welcome and thank the committee who answered, but I was disappointed that not everyone did on the committee. Obviously, it says they don't have to, but we do welcome feedback, and I certainly do as chair, as I'm sure you're all aware. But can I open up to any questions? I don't see any. Do we have any comments? I don't see any of those either. Again, just for me, even if people don't wish to comment in public today, I'm sure everyone knows that both I, but certainly Leslie Montague, the governance manager, very open to suggestions and input to this. So even if moving ahead, people think the questions can be varied, please do feed that back to the governance manager. And committee, happy to take on board the recommendation on the paper. Thank you. We move on to item 12, which is the Zurich Business Continuity Review. And I will ask Stuart Saunders to speak to this. Stuart, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Risk management and consultancy services are provided to the Council by Zurich as part of the Council's current insurance contract. At the request of the then Governance and Risk Board, a review of the Council's business continuity arrangements was undertaken. This involved a review of current business continuity documents and arrangements in place against good practice and international standards. Zurich concluded that West Lothian Council has a foundation upon which business continuity arrangements can be developed and outlined findings and recommended areas for improvement. Subsequently, an action plan was created, and this is provided in Appendix 1 to the report. The action plan provides details of Zurich's findings and recommendations, along with the proposed actions and timescales for implementation. In summary, the actions required are to review and update the Council's business continuity policy and procedures, including a review of the roles and responsibilities within the policy, a review of training and awareness arrangements in place, and develop the guidance and templates for business continuity test exercises, and also to enhance the content of service business continuity plans. Progress on the actions is in progress, and as noted in the cover report, the recommendation regarding formal training has already been actioned, with business continuity plan training provided to all service management teams in January this year. Chair, the committee is invited to note the findings and the agreed actions following Zurich's review, and I'd be happy to take any questions.
Stuart, thank you very much for the report. Do we have any questions? I don't see any. Do we have any comments? Pauline.
I really just wanted to say to Stuart, I'm really pleased to see that Zurich have identified a number of concerns in our processes, but importantly, that such swift action has been taken to perform a robust review, and I look forward to seeing the improvements at a future committee of governance and risk. So thank you for that.
Pauline, thank you very much. Do we have any further comments? I don't see any. Just from me, Stuart, thank you very much for that. I think I am reassured by what's come through this paper. So well done to yourself and the team. Committee, happy to take on board the recommendation on item 12. Thank you. We move to item 13, which is the high risk WLC 025, the economic downturn. I'll ask Alice Mitchell to speak to this. Alice.
Thank you, Chair. The purpose of this report is to provide a committee with information regarding the management and overview of the risk concerning potential impacts of an economic downturn. WLC 025 was established as a high risk following the closure of Vion Halls of Broxburn in 2012, with the loss of over 1,200 jobs, and continues to be a high risk due to other economic factors such as Brexit and more recently trade tariffs. The risk is managed on a monthly basis, and we've established a number of internal controls that are in Appendix 1. The risk controls were subject of an internal audit in late 2023, with the internal controls determined to be effective, with only one outstanding item, which was the investment plan for 2035, which will be published after Council Executive in recess, after recess in August. I'm happy to take any questions, Chair.
Alice, thank you very much. Do we have any questions? Alice, one for me. You mentioned the Brexit and tariffs as being impacts into this area. Do you consider also the national insurance increase, but also the non-domestic rate that isn't passed over to all businesses? I'm thinking particularly about the hospitality industry in Scotland, that they will also have an impact into the high risks in the economic downturn for West Lothian.
Yeah, I actually have a very bad ear infection, and I was just struggling there to what you actually asked me. Could you say it again, please?
Yeah, of course I can. I'll speak close to the mic as well. Sorry, Alice. Yeah, you mentioned about the Brexit and the trade tariffs as being impacts into this area of economic downturn. Would you also consider the national insurance increase, but also the non-domestic rates that hasn't been passed over to the hospitality industry as both having a potential negative impact in this area?
Chair, what we are doing just now is monitoring every sector and anything that may affect business productivity, and we are closely working with Scottish Enterprise in all sectors. So far, there has been very little negative effect coming forward, but I think it's too soon to say, but it's something that we are mindful of and keeping ourselves up to date with. And we can be able to report back on committee on anything that we get from that.
I think that would be welcomed, Alice. Thank you. Do we have any further questions? Don't see any comments. Don't see any either. Thank you for the report, Alice. Corey, we do have a comment, and again, Anne, I'm being far too quick to allow you to comment, so I do apologise. Anne, over to yourself.
I think it's very early days, but the rise in national insurance contributions and also the budget situation across the whole of Scotland and the budget deficit gaps that exist potentially are going to bring impacts from third sector organisations, which will lead to potential economic downturn in different local authority areas. So it's just a comment around that to be vigilant around that as well.
And thank you very much for that comment. Do we have any further comments? I don't see any. Committee happy to take on board the recommendations of the report. Thank you. We move on to item 14, the business continuity planning for corporate services, and I'll pass this over to Leslie Henderson.
So my presentation provides an overview of the information contained in the accompanying report and covers the purpose of business continuity planning, an overview of the corporate framework and how this is applied in corporate services. Business continuity planning is an integral part of the Council's risk management process, and we have BCP arrangements in place to ensure that essential services of the Council continue to run during an unforeseen event. The plans provide detailed procedures and instructions to follow so that employees can safely perform their roles and ensure that services continue with minimal disruption. Planning for and approaching an unforeseen event in this way supports a structured approach to full recovery by defining clear roles, responsibilities and decision-making structures. It's a requirement of the Civil Contingencies Act that the Council assesses the risk of an emergency occurring and develop plans that, so far as reasonably practicable, ensure that if emergency does occur, the Council is still able to perform its functions. The Council has business continuity management policy in place, and although subject to review as Stuart's just outlined, this sets the corporate framework, procedures and templates that the service are required to adhere to. The Governance and Risk Board provides oversight of the BCP arrangements, including approving service activity classifications, approving the BCP templates, and overseeing desktop exercises and actions that might come from that. There have been previous test exercises undertaken that assess the effectiveness of the plans for corporate functions, and these include the contact centre and payroll, and these led to changes in the plans that we have in place for both of these areas. Corporate Service BCP plans covers each service function and classifies these as WLC 1s, 2s and 3s. The plan for each area provides details of the IT applications used in the services and how these would be accessed in the event of an emergency. Details of staffing requirements, including minimal levels needed to operate, core functions and alternative working locations are also included. The plans provide detail on how service delivery and processes would change in the event of loss of IT. And as required by the corporate framework, all risks and control measures are reviewed by the management team on a monthly basis, and we do this at our corporate services management team meeting. The business continuity plan is also reviewed and updated on an annual basis, although if there was an event that occurred during the year within the review period, then the plan would be reviewed and any actions taken to update as required. The threats that are addressed in each of the functional plans cover the following scenarios: loss of staff from factors including adverse weather, a pandemic, and how the economy may impact on our ability to attract and retain. These have been tested on a number of occasions, most recently during Storm Orwin, when we had to have staff in corporate services, majority of them working from home. Members will also recall a report to committee in December last year on actions taken to manage the risk in legal services associated with the impact on the economy and our inability to recruit solicitors to match market rates. We have batteries and generators in place to manage the impact of any power outage on our IT estate, and plans include alternative work arrangements, including home working or locating to another council building in the event of the loss of the civic centre. All plans also set out how the service continue to operate in the short, medium and longer term in the event of loss of IT. This slide contains an overview on the categorisation of activities and the numbers that we have that have been assessed as WLC 1s, 2s and 3s. You'll see we have 1 WLC 1, 9 2s and 5 3s. The 1 WLC1 activity that we have is a very important service, Care Line, which provides the telephone support service for electronic care alarms used by older and vulnerable people in West Lothian. And as noted in the supporting report, this is tested regularly and switches to a third-party provider automatically if there are any issues. We also have the option of mobile telephony to use there in the event that there might be a very short-term cut-off access. There are 9 WLC2 activities, which are detailed here, and the majority of these cover a range of support functions which are required to be operational to provide advice, support and operational infrastructure to frontline services and other council services in the event of an emergency. A high-level overview of the arrangements for each of these is set out in the report, but you will be aware that a number of these have been tested by the pandemic, and a lot of changes to operational working arrangements came as a result of us using our business continuity plans at that time, including hybrid working. Our WLC3 activities are activities which, if not maintained for a period of 30 days, would start to have significant impact on the Council's objectives. And there are 5 functional activities which fall into this category. And again, information is included in the report around the arrangements that are in place for these. In summary, the successful development and implementation of our BCP not only strengthens our operational capabilities, but also instills confidence amongst our stakeholders that we're able to withstand and recover from disruptive events. The plans identify key activities and resources that will ensure the delivery of critical services in the event of an incident, and the arrangements are subject to the regular test and review. I'm happy to take questions, Chair.
Leslie, thank you very much for that report and presentation. I open this up now to any questions. And Linda, I see you're there first.
Thanks, Leslie, for that presentation. It certainly cleared up a couple of other questions that I had. Can you say what changes have been made from the existing plan that you have? And the reason I'm asking is there's a report coming up to PNR on Friday that actually details out from their existing plan in 2023. It's the revenue management. And they've taken the 23 plan, and within it, they've shown all the new changes to it, which is of great benefit because you're no searching through your existing plan for a business continuity to see where the changes are. Mm-hmm. And it something similar to something like this, which is so important, would be beneficial.
Listen.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, what's not included along with my report is the detailed business continuity plan for corporate services. It's many, many pages long and includes a significant amount of detail. I did reference that following a test, there had been changes made to, the payroll plan, and that is detailed in the report, where we've obviously been dealing with a cyber incident. So this was in relation to simulated incident, where we now have what's termed as an immutable backup, which means that actually it doesn't sit on a server. We have a copy of the database that sits out with the council server environment. So it has the usual backup arrangements in place, but there is something that goes beyond that to protect us even further in the event of a cyber attack.
Okay.
Thank you, Leslie. Linda?
That's fine.
Thank you very much. Pauline, yourself.
Leslie, I just wanted to ask you one wee question about the WLC3 activities, where you've got mail service as one of the least priority. I'm just thinking of around the time of perhaps when council tax notifications go out and all the rest of it. Are we completely confident that we'll have got everything in place to meet any incident around crucial periods of time, such as the issue of council tax? Because I can know from experience of the pandemic, how very quickly incoming mail or the need for outgoing mail can back up.
Yeah, I mentioned 30 days in the WLC3, but I can say that we do look to reinstate the mail service at an earlier point in time than that. Right. What it involves is the moving, or not the moving, we can't move the mail franking machine, so we'd have to source another mail franking machine and put that in an alternative location. But equally, it's my understanding that a number of the services that have large mail shots are actually managed externally, but we could seek confirmation from that. So if we were issuing council tax bills, then that would be done by an external provider, is my understanding, but I can clarify that.
Thank you.
Any further questions, Pauline?
Well, that was all.
That's great. Thank you, Pauline. Anne?
Just asking for some clarification, because we talk about here all this documentation, but if you go back to the Zurich report, it says there's limited documentation to demonstrate that the existence of a robust and strategically planned business continuity programme.
And thank you, Leslie.
So I think some of the findings from the Zurich report are that there are areas where we could strengthen our business continuity planning arrangements, and I wouldn't disagree with that. I think it's one of the things Zurich are very experienced of supporting organisations through something like this, as we have dealt with incidents such as the recent cyber event and pandemics and the storm. These allow us to learn from these on each occasion and actually go back to our business continuity plans to make changes as required. So the findings from the Zurich report are very helpful for us to actually build on what we already have in place.
Thank you, Leslie. Anne?
Yeah, it's just that the fact that they say there's a lack of robust documentation, and it seems this is talking about very robust documentation.
Leslie, I think you have answered that, Leslie, but is it something that maybe that after the, maybe to future committee, we could maybe get some more detail on it for the comparison, or how we've moved forward?
I think one of the things that as I said, mentioned that we've learned from some of the incidents that we've had to deal with is that we do respond very well and very robustly in the event of an incident. What has come from Zurich is it would be there may be clearer and more effective ways of documenting that, so actually people know what to do. We've formed, we have appropriate arrangements in place to set up incident response teams. So it's just around some of the documentation and how that sits in the plan.
Thank you, Leslie. Stuart, would you like to add anything further there?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just to echo exactly what Leslie was saying there, I think the Zurich report was more focusing on the strategy and the policy, so the high-level documentation. On the ground, we have robust templates in place so that the services have their own business continuity plans in place, which are detailed, but the weaknesses identified by Zurich, which are welcome, are in regards to the strategy and the policy, and they're definitely being taken forward and they'll be updated and brought up to date.
Stuart, thank you very much. Anne, does that satisfy your question?
It does, but it begs the question, if you're able to put robust plans in place, not linked to any strategy. So if we now have a strategy in place, do we have to go back and review all the robust plans because they might be out of kilter with what the strategy now turns out to be?
And I think that's an excellent question, stroke point there, Anne. So I'll ask either Leslie and or Stuart both to come in on that.
Yes, so as part of the action plan, that's definitely one of the actions, and it's included in the actual actions itself, is to, once the policy and strategy are both reviewed and brought up to date, that will then filter its way through into the actual templates themselves. There will be a brand new template prepared, and that's already in progress, and that will introduce all the findings and the recommendations that Zurich have made.
Thank you, Stuart. Thank you. Anne, anything else on that? Sort of almost to follow on from that, and Leslie and Stuart, you may be able to come with this, is for a successful BCP, it's the processes and plans to be put into place in the event of or when the incident happens. And I think historically, I'm not saying the council, but historically, companies and organisations have been challenged with getting the plan off the shelf in the event of an incident. I'm not necessarily talking about off the physical shelf these days with IT. Are we satisfied that we are, as an organisation, have access to put the plans into place in the event of whatever that incident may be?
Yes, as noted, so that they're stored on our internal council system, which is Objective, and also on IdeaGem, which is an externally hosted system. But equally, I have a copy of the CP plan printed for corporate services so that I have access to that.
And that's right. And in the event of you not being around, Leslie, when an incident occurs,
would be my deputy.
People know who
Yes.
takes it off the shelf, as it were. Because again, I can speak with a history of an event here. That it is, do they really know who's actually taking it off the shelf to put it into place?
Yes. As I mentioned, we obviously talk about risk at the corporate services management team, and business continuity planning is another aspect. And I think, given recent events, it's very topical just around how we might manage ourselves in the event of an incident happening.
Thank you, Leslie. Committee, do we have any further questions? Do we have any comments? Pauline.
I really just wanted to say how very reassuring it has been to hear of all the positive steps that you're taking in respect of business continuity planning. And having been in a past life an ICO and a member of a response team, I know just how much preparation, planning and coordination it takes once you are having to deal with an actual situation as against a desk exercise for practice. And of course, as you rightly said, we've had the pandemic, we've had the storm, and most recently the cyber attack. So had a variation of things just to go through there. So just wanted to respect all the very hard work that's going on that. And I say just so very reassuring it is to see that is continually being reviewed to keep everything, keep us all safe and keep services going, especially when IT services can all be on such different platforms as well. So thank you, Leslie, for that.
Thank you, Pauline. And again, for the first time, I'm sure committee echo your comments there. Do we have any further comments? Committee happy to take on board the recommendation on the paper. Thank you. We move to item 15, the work plan. Do we have any questions regarding the work plan? Do we have any comments? I would repeat my standard one at this stage of the meeting, and that should you wish to see something on the Governance and Risk Committee, please do feedback to the Governance Manager and myself. So we take on board the work plan moving forward. Thank you. Before we, that is the meeting concluded, but before we leave today, most of you will be very aware that today will be Kenneth Ribbon's last appearance at the Governance and Risk Committee. He has certainly been involved even way before my time in the past 8 years, but certainly in the role in the previous role he had, and with no slight to Stuart Saunders. Kenneth, you will be sorely missed, and I just would like to say my personal thanks for all the support you've given me in your role previously and now in the finance role. It's been much appreciated. The knowledge you've brought to this committee has certainly helped us all here, and I'd just like to personally thank you and wish you all the very best for the future as well, Kenneth. Thank you very much.
Chair, thank you. Your words are very kind, and I'm struggling with the emotion of this occasion, but just to say I won't miss you.
Yes, I won't take that personally. All the very best. And thank you, everybody, for your input in today's meeting. Thank you.